My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. Spring fever and summer is around the corner, and in this video I'm going to set up my jungle courtyard to maximize foliage, flower and fragrance. I've got benches, I've got 5 large pots, and all of it needs to be put in just the right position before you commit to it. Let's go. So for those regular viewers, you'll know about my courtyard and how it's tiny and I like to grow unusual plants. And for my new viewers, I'm going to walk you through my setup process. My garden is tiny. There's no lawn, there's no irrigation system. I've got 2 benches and some space for some really choice plants. And what I like to do is set up my courtyard over a number of weekends. And I'm really keen to point out to you the need to stay off your soil. You want to get into an area and dig it and work it and plant it and then get out of there and don't go back. You don't need to be traipsing around your garden with great big boots compacting the soil. So what you'll see me do in this video is I've got some pots that I want to place. I've got some furniture that I want to place. I'm very, very careful to try and stay on the paths and dig and lift and move as I go. And I've always got a plastic pot or a plastic tote that I'm putting garbage in. There's no need to prune stuff, set it on the floor, and then come back and pick it up. And I've talked about this in previous videos. The nice thing is that with a plastic tote, you see there's one there on the bench. It never gets too heavy. I can easily pick it up and move it, put it in the back of my truck and throw it away. Now this little gadget was a recycled greenhouse. Well, I made it into a recycled greenhouse and now it's time for it to go into storage, and I don't need that because we're into nice warm weather. But that served a wonderful purpose. Not only did it help keep the plants warmer, but it also protected them from cold wind, which has a very debilitating effect. Now this area here, I've got some stones that are just slightly covered with soil and I'm trying to uncover them. That's where a bench is going to go. And now that I've got a really good idea where that bench is, I've decided I've got space to put in one more plant. This is the spectacular hedychium. Most amazing fragrance, beautiful white flowers. And I've deliberately planted that behind my bench so that fragrance becomes very intoxicating. It'll be in close proximity. Now these 2 little plants were featured in my previous video. This is the Ajuga Black Scallop, and I showed you how to take rooted cuttings. Very, very easy. These 2 were the mother plants that have been in the greenhouse for a week, so they are now perfectly placed to get put into the garden. And I want to point out to you here that these plants, be very gentle with them. You'll see that I've got one hand that holds the plant upright. And I change hands, still holding it upright. And that means that I get it at the right level and it's not tilting one way or the other. And it's a technique that you kind of just pick up and run with it. I don't know that I was ever taught that. It's just something that I do. So when you're planting small, tender plants, don't just drop it in the hole and backfill it. Just cup it with one hand, hold it at the right level, hold it at the right angle, and then as you put your backfill in, your plant is just ready to grow like crazy. So these 2 black scallop have been put where the bench will go, and you'll see that in a moment. And this is a really good example of getting into an area and addressing it all at once. I've got clippers in one hand, being very careful where I put my feet because there's lots of plant growth in this area. And I've got a small plastic pot, picking out all the weeds and discarding it in one go. And then I can work my way out of that area and I don't have to step in, step out, step in and step out. This area here is where I've got beautiful lilies. And as I was working through it, I pulled out one of last year's stalks. And I've heard of this, but I've never seen it. Last year's stalk had put out some little babies. So I will very carefully prune and separate and put these into pots and grow them on. And it will take a couple of years, but I'll have some nice new lilies to go back into the garden. It's always worth looking at what you're pulling out of a garden, because you never quite know what you're going to find. I worked through this bed, and I've got this bulb that the previous owner must have coveted, but I find it bland and boring. It's a little white star flower. It doesn't do much for me, and I've been trying to get rid of it. And every year I'll come through and pull out handfuls and handfuls, and that's exactly what I did here. But there's never an end in sight. That's not true. I am gradually getting on top of it. But I want to be careful not to snap any of those lily stalks, because that's what's going to have the big amount of flowers on. Now, if you want to increase the flower count on lilies, make sure that they don't dry out. They don't want to be too wet, and you've heard me say that before. But if they have a little bit more moisture, they can take up more nutrients, more water into the cells, and you'll get lots more flowers. And what I do is I've got lilies, then a dahlia, then lilies, then a dahlia. And I have that in this area that's probably, I don't know, about 20 feet long. And here we go. We're putting the dahlia in that I potted on 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more. I dug it up after it had a frost last year, and here we are putting it back in the ground. So this plant has literally cost me nothing because I bothered to save it. And once you get the process down, saving plants and overwintering them, which is very much my core skill. I love saving plants through the winter and then getting them in the ground at the right time. So this dahlia is going to perform nicely. Now my little greenhouse is gradually emptying and bringing out plants as I feel the weather is appropriate. And this is one of my last pots. In here I've got a really nice white agapanthus, and I've got a purple plant called tibucina. And I've deliberately not pruned the tibucina because I think that I'm going to be able to generate flowers sooner. Now I want to make this point. Large pots, you want to get them in place and bother to get them level. I will come out with a spirit level and set this in place so that it doesn't lean. It's very eye-catching to me when you see a plant that's perfectly level, or indeed one that isn't. So this is the area where we put our ajuga, and just making sure I've got it exactly how I want it before I bring out my bench. You'll notice that I've done a lot of planting, a lot of weeding, and I've set my pots out before I bring out this larger bench, because frequently there's just no space. And I don't want to be tripping up and not being able to get access to where I want things. So when I managed to bring this bench in, it's the second of 2 benches, but it's amazing how it fills up that space, and all of a sudden the courtyard starts to come to life, and you can really feel that, all right, let's go. We're well into spring, and we're going to start getting that explosive growth. So thank you for watching another video. I, as ever, really enjoy doing them. I can't wait to be sat out here with a nice glass of wine. Tell your friends, tell your family. Thank you so much. Remember, go and plant something.